Let's talk about destroying culture and heritage. So they did have a gun confiscation program. They call it a buyback. Let's be very clear. You cannot buy back something you never owned in the first place. It was confiscation. And the confiscation program that they brought out here in WA, they judged the value of the firearm based on when it was registered. If it was registered less than 6 years in the state, rifle, pistol, or shotgun, it was deemed a certain value. If it was over 6 years in terms of when it was registered in WA, it was a different value. They did not offer compensation based on market value like they did back in 1996, because there is a clause in the Australian Constitution that says if the Commonwealth Government confiscate private property from the people of Australia, they have to pay fair market price. That is a clause in the Constitution. When it comes to the state governments, they do not have to do that. So Labor devised this scheme, this table of how much the state would pay taxpayers' money, by the way, in a cost of living crisis. They thought it was a good idea to buy guns off of peaceful people just to get less legally owned guns off the street, because their justification, it makes people safer. This is the mentality of the government that we have in WA. So they had that gun confiscation program, and like Jack said, they released the regulations just before Christmas, 2 days before Christmas. I remember because I did a live stream with Aussie Reviews in Queensland, who was messaging me going, "Have you seen this, Kate?" And we were reading it together because we don't have a life. This consumes us. And we were just horrified at what the government had put out after they closed the confiscation or buyback scheme. And now we are at the point that people own firearms that are suddenly banned by the state, and there's confusion going around. The police minister is saying that he told the shooting organisations that this was going to happen, so it's up to them to communicate it. People are getting letters from Waypol in the post saying this push button release firearm is now legal. You have to dispose of it for no compensation. This is the situation. The boot of the state is on our neck. So this is a situation we have in WA with private property that we have paid big money for. Some people, that's their whole passion. I know my dad has a lot of firearms that he collects because that's his passion. You are allowed to have your interests. Some people collect stamps, some people collect firearms. We're all different. As long as we're not hurting anybody else, we should be allowed to do that and not punished by the state, who's come up with their own ideology and says this is no longer okay. So we are now looking at a situation in WA. There are people who have firearms that are suddenly banned. They can't get fair market price because the confiscation scheme is closed. The gun shops don't want to hear about them. The gun shops, they very certainly do not want anything to do with WA. I've spoken to a few of them over there, and they said, why would we bother? We don't want to touch it. So, Jack, have you been getting a lot of messages from people about these confiscation letters? And as you are running for the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party at this election, you are number 4 on the ticket, so a bit far down, but who knows? Hopefully we might have a big shooting wave and you could get up. What is the policy of the Shooters and Fishers Farmers Party about these confiscation letters? Would you reopen the buyback scheme? Would you be fighting it? What is your solution, and what do you personally think about the way that Labor has gone about this whole process?
Well, one of the things you need to look at and understand where the problems really lie in not the written intent of the Act, but the demonstrated intent of the Act, is how they are basing things on KPIs, so key point indicators. And so they've put out a goal of reducing the number of firearms privately held by 55,000, somewhere in that vicinity. That methodology does not work when you start introducing KPIs for things like crime. And so a good thing, again, it's the same minister. Kalgoorlie has got an issue with crime. Carnarvon has got an issue with crime. And they started issuing KPIs to the sergeants in charge, saying, we want you to reduce the arrests by this much and you'll get a bonus. And so what happens there? Well, it gets pushed down and people don't get arrested for crimes. They just get a slap on the wrist and told, "Wait, don't do that again." And what has that done? Well, hang on a second. Now we've got more crime than ever. And we've got less police wanting to serve. We've got record numbers of police leaving the force, because in Western Australia it's a force, um, because they cannot perform their job in improving public safety. So, on one hand, we've got a minister who's quoting public safety as the target, and then you've got the reduction, and we've got police leaving because they cannot, provide the service of enhancing public safety. So it's a bit of a quandary. This whole KPI situation has really led to this complete and utter screw up in design of legislation and enacting it, and then also how it actually works in the real world. So when we come into the lever release situation and the prohibited firearms and this idea of, what as a party would we do? Well, I can tell you, if we get a couple of people up, the inaugural speeches are definitely going to be worth listening to, because the gloves are going to come off in regards to this. But there is no possible reason for the firearms that are known as lever release, or the rapid release firearms, as they're trying to call them, for public safety. People can keep them. Like, as a party, we keep them. Hell, like, we would sit there and we just go, "We're sorry that we couldn't stop this from happening because we had no voice in Parliament. We are sorry that we couldn't, you know, get them to see reason. We're sorry that they wouldn't listen to the public or one of the largest petitions ever tabled in Western Australia. You know, we would just be saying that we are sorry and we are going to get it back, get our firearms back. And hell, if I had some control over the budget, I'd be turning around and going, this whole let's give someone $750, um, to make sure that you vote for us again, Labor. I'd be turning around and going, that's not happening. Every firearm owner who had their firearm taken off them is going to get their firearm back if we can, and you're going to get some money in your pocket to sort yourself out because of the inconvenience. Just like they grab a kid, knock him into the bloody court, and then they get given $250 and told not to shoplift again. Well, if that works for that, well, how about we give the money back to our firearms owners